Hi, I'm Drew.
I'm Harley.
I'm Nancy, and we're the Bound in Book podcast. You can expect a fun time, some curse words, and a lot of discussion. Our episodes will both feature guests and be conversations between the three of us.
We do intend to stay spoiler-free for the majority of our shows. Our guest episodes will feature a spoiler section towards the end. We are here to be an author, reader, and industry at large safe space to discuss books, opinions, and feelings. But we are going to keep it positive.
We want listeners to know that we are not here to bash your favorite stories or authors, but may discuss things we didn't like too. And we hope you join our discussion over on social media and enjoy the episode. Hey guys, Harley here. I just wanted to insert an editor's note at the beginning. I was having a couple of technical issues. My mic was malfunctioning, so I'm a little bit muffled. This should be the last episode that we have that issue because we figured out what was going on right after finishing the recording for this. The second thing is that there are spoilers for a couple of series. We are talking with Vanessa about her second book, Forever Rain, and we do keep it spoiler free for Forever Rain outside of the spoiler section, but there are some light spoilers for the first book, Long Live, at the very beginning of this episode or throughout the beginning section of this episode. And then we also talk about spoilers for Harry Potter, specifically from Goblet of Fire to the end of the series.
Hi guys, welcome. Lacey is an indie author who loves all things fiction. She grew up on stories of magic, love, sarcasm, and all those float into her writing. She's currently writing romantic fantasy and happily ever afters, and she has 2 books out, and they are a duology.
The first book is Long Live. It's about a woman named Isla whose family is attacked while traveling. Meanwhile, across the world, 4 beings who rule the elements are rising from a deep slumber to prevent a dark force from overturning the balance of nature. Isla crosses paths with one of those beings, and the adventure goes from there. The second book, Forever Rain, just came out, and that's what we'll be discussing today. It deals with the fallout of the decisions made in Long Live.
You can find Vanessa at vblacybooks.com or on Instagram and TikTok as at vblacybooks.
Welcome to the show, Vanessa.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm so excited you're our first guest.
Yay, I'm so happy you asked.
So usually we start off the top of our shows with what we're currently reading. So are you reading anything fun right now?
Yeah, I'm reading Vows and Ruins by Helen Schurer, and I'm probably like 50-60% of the way through, and I'm really loving it. I love Wilder and Thea, and she's just such a good writer. It's hard not to fall in love with all the characters.
Yeah, I was telling Sheila, I think, who's a mutual friend of ours, I was telling Sheila when I was reading it, I was like, I feel like you can just feel her world building and like character writing like experience. You really feel it in those books. It's so good.
Yeah, it's great.
What about you, Nancy? What are you reading?
Reading a book, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but I'm reading a book called Forever Rain. I'm sorry, but I am 30 something percent through, I think. Like 30,
Okay.
33.
We do have to kick you out when we do our spoiler part.
I know. I was really trying to get it done in time for today, but life happened this weekend, which was when I was planning on doing a lot of my reading. So, but I'm still working my way through that, and I also haven't been doing as much with audiobooks, so I'm still working my way through Legendary. So,
What are you reading, Harley?
I'm about 75% of the way through City of Mirth and Malice, which we talked about a couple days ago. And it's an arc that comes out on Wednesday. By the time this is out, it will be out for a couple days. It is so good. I read the whole first book, so this is book 2, I believe, of a duology. Is that right? I read the first book. Literally, I started it at like 3 p.m. and then I stayed up until 3 a.m. to finish it because I just like couldn't stop reading it. It was so good. It's like, if you haven't listened to the other episode yet, where Drew talked about it, it's like steampunk meets fantasy meets Star-crossed lovers meets mafia. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I definitely want to read that one. I love Alexis.
Okay, speaking of Sheila, I am rereading the Lost God series and I'm on the Storm King and it hurts so bad. It hurts my
Okay,
soul.
does it hurt worse than the first time you
It's
read
so much worse. It's so much worse 'cause well, I think especially where the Storm King ends off, like that's my current reality with these characters. So I know where they're at and it just like especially the lost or the memory curse hurt the most. I was like, "Oh, I know what's going to happen. I'll be fine." And it hurts so much more with the knowledge I have now. So if you're planning on rereading before The Lost God comes out in June, just be prepared mentally for that.
I that one, the memory curse, and also the shards of Ophelia. I don't know if I'll be able to go back and reread those because they were very sad. They really hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll hurt again. Vanessa, have you read how caught up are you with Sheila's series?
So I am completely caught up on all Coven reads except for finishing Vows and Ruins and then Fates and Furies. So I've read everything. Plus, I've read like Scourged and Nicole's novella and part of Nicole's book 4. So I got the goods.
Oh my god, I'm so jealous.
I'm so excited for her novella. I was messaging her the other day too. You're gonna have the best worst time reading it. And I was like, I'm very excited, but I'm very scared.
Yeah, I was expecting, I don't know why novellas, I just expect to like be kind of like their own little standalones and to like wrap up nicely. I don't know why I expect that because that's not reality. And yeah, no, hers is like a huge cliffhanger and you're just like depressed. So good
Oh.
luck. Have fun.
Oh no. I did not know until embarrassingly recently that novella just denoted the length of the book. It has nothing to do with how relevant it is to the series or anything like that. I thought that it was just like an optional read for a series because, like, you think about in ACOTAR, like A Court of Frost and Starlight is a Christmas special novella, right? A lot of people don't read it. You think about A Short Second Life of Bree Tanner with Twilight, that's a novella, but you don't have to read it. It's like additional reading. So I just always thought that that was until I think it was Kay maybe was like, that's wrong. Don't say that.
It's okay. We forgive you.
Appreciate it. Vanessa, can you kind of give us a spoiler-free summary of Forever Rain?
Yeah, Forever Rain is dealing with the aftermath of things that happen at the end of Long Live. We have characters scattered across the different kingdoms, trying to kind of recoup and build a life for themselves, picking up the broken pieces of what happens at the end of book 1. There is an invitation issued by a mysterious kingdom that ends up summoning all of them back to the place where it all kind of began. And then from there, the characters go through a quest to find some hidden items to figure out who's behind all of the things going on the island, who's pulling the strings, who's behind everything. And there are multiple romances, some continued from book 1 and some new. And so it's just a lot of wrapping up their stories and their character arcs and figuring out who's left standing at the end.
So exciting. One of the things that I think a lot of us, or at least myself, like I forget about when I'm reading your series is that there's no spice. Like the romance is so tantalizing and the tension is so high all the time. Like I genuinely forget that this is a no spice book. And so we were wondering, why did you decide to make it closed door or no spice?
That's just what I felt most comfortable writing. And I think there's an audience of readers who enjoy the themes and the feel of like new adult fantasy. You know, you have these characters. I mean, my characters, Isla is 22 and Sebastian is in his 30s, and the elementals are immortal. But I mean, in my head, they probably look like late 20s, early 30s. So it's not YA, and I don't want it to feel YA. But I think there's an audience of readers who enjoy these themes without the spice. And I wanted to be able to write that for them, to write that for that audience. But I also think even people who enjoy spice can also enjoy this because it's not central to the plot, but you still feel you still feel their tension and like how attracted they are to each other and how the love like blossoms from that. And so I think there's a way you can do both, you know?
No, totally. I love spice. Like, at one point, I would only read books that had spice. Genuinely, no, reading yours, I was like, I didn't feel like anything was missing. Like, it fit perfectly with the story. Like you said, it's not the main point. Like, their romance isn't everything that the plot is about. So it fits perfectly.
Thanks. That's always nice to hear. And I mean, you can fill in the lines with anything you want because
Oh yeah,
it probably all happened.
I've had some good dreams
Yeah.
about Sebastian. We can bleep his name.
Okay, speaking of Sebastian, of Bleep, um, I I didn't realize that they had such an age gap.
Yeah. I mean, I don't talk about it a ton because I don't want readers to necessarily just think of age the whole time. And I want it to kind of be able to fit like somebody who's at any stage in life, I guess. But I actually think it might only be mentioned like once in chapter 1 and maybe one other time how old Isla is. She's 22. And it also there are some references throughout the book when she's talking about like 6 years ago when I was 16 or whatever. I think there are references like that so you can place her age in time. And yeah, Sebastian's age is mentioned a couple times just in relation to like other monarchies and the fact that he's a fairly young king and like his dad, died at such and such age and all that. So I place it a few times, but I don't put a ton of emphasis on it.
Yeah, I literally didn't realize until you just said it. So something else actually that's really interesting is that you told me you just see the words on the page like when you read. I know I see a whole movie. I'm in a movie theater, a movie is playing in front of my eyeballs when I'm reading stuff, but you don't. You just see the words. And you write like incredibly vivid, like rich detail.
Well, I've had to train myself a lot, so I can, if I'm reading a book and really, really trying, I can picture things now. I've gotten a little bit better about it, but if I'm just reading quickly or not wanting to have to use that much brain power, yeah, I can't picture it. I just see the words. So when I'm writing, I typically have to have I rely very heavily on images that I find online to write specific descriptions. I mean, I think anybody can pick. I mean, I know how to describe certain things that are generic, But if I'm writing a very specific scene, a very specific image or a person, I have to have multiple images pulled up on a screen that I can kind of draw from. And I have my document on another screen and I just start typing what I see and I'll add embellishments and make it flow, but I can't just kind of draw something up from nothing in my head. So there are a few things in particular I know I did that with, like in Long Live, the hot springs. There's a hot springs up in the mountains, in the Adirondack Mountains, and I had to find pictures of that because I just didn't know what I wanted it to look like. I couldn't picture a hot springs in the mountains in my head, so I had to draw pictures from that. And the ball scene in Forever Rain was another one that I was like, I have no idea what this looks like. So I found a picture on Pinterest and literally word for word described this scene in my head. So I definitely have to rely. I mean, I can't picture any of my characters. Like I have no idea what they look like. So I mean, it kind of sucks. I wish I could see a movie like you can, but I make do.
That's really funny that you said that you can't imagine the hot spring scene because literally when you that came out of your mouth, I had an image immediately in my head. And the one scene at the end of the book, you all know. That one I was just like, "Oh my god, that's so funny," because I just you did it so well that I have an association even though you don't, which is so weird.
Well, thank you. That's definitely two of the like biggest compliments I can get that I see from people are whenever they talk about how vivid the imagery is, just because that's something that I struggle so hard with. And then something else you said about the spice, about how like it doesn't feel like my romance needs the spice. Those are like two of the biggest, they mean the most to me because they're something that like I have a lot of insecurity about.
You also do a really good job of writing innuendo without it being like crap.
Yeah.
So anyone who is not interested in reading spice can just glide right over that and just be like, ha ha ha, funny. But then people like me where I like reading it. It's a fun time for me. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, well, that's me as a person. I mean, Harley probably knows me the best. I love innuendos, and I mean, Aiden is my personality, like to a T. I love the that's what she said, and like making any sort of joke out of things like that and adding those little things.
Oh my God. Can we talk about, for just like 1 second, this is completely off topic, saying TWSS? I didn't know that meant that's what she said before
Oh
anyone
my
said
goodness.
anything. You guys. It was one of the emojis in the Discord. That was the abbreviation for it. And when it pops up, it says that's what she said. And I was like, oh my God, is that what that means?
That's funny.
If it makes you feel better, I had to ask Sheila.
I just thought she was hissing at me.
I kind of thought the same thing. Yeah, I was like, like a laugh. Like,
Yeah.
oh God.
Vanessa, could you tell us a bit more about your world? Is there pieces of it that you wanted to explore more?
The world, it's just 4 kingdoms in Long Live and Forever Reign, and each of them are actually somewhat based on real world areas or a combination of places because, you know, we write what we know, so it's easy to draw from references in the real world. So like Iona is kind of like the Greek Isles, and Ivonlia is the climate, at least, not like necessarily the people and everything else, but the climate at least was pulled from kind of Russia or like northern countries. And Karstus is like Europe and England, and Aramir is Egypt or South Africa, you know, like the southern countries. And I tried to make them real. I did a lot of research with like what these areas' climates would be, what crops could grow there, what the culture would be like, what the occupation would be, how they all contributed to like the world as a whole, because that's how real world works. And just exploring some of that. And like with writing, there's so much that it's like an iceberg. There's only the tip of it that you guys see, and then there's everything underneath that goes into it and all kind of plays into what you see on paper. If I wanted to explore anything more, it would be kind of the past with these kingdoms, like how they ended up where they are. And this is not a spoiler to Long Live because it's in the description, but there was a war 1,000 years ago that happened that you just kind of see the aftermath of, and I think I would like to explore that more one day. I don't know if I ever will, but that's something that I think would be a lot of fun to explore and get to like see how all this happened.
It would be.
That'd be super cool to another glimpse at this world in the past. I think didn't Cassandra Clare do that with her series, her Immortal Bone series for them?
Yeah, so Kathy Clare has like 4 different series and then a handful of like smaller novella standalones or like interconnected novellas that all take place in the same world. So there's the Mortal Instruments, and then there's another series called The Infernal Devices that takes place like way, way earlier, like generations before. I don't know what any of the other series are called.
Oh, wow.
There's like 4 different series and then a whole bunch of little like spin-offs.
Ooh. Well, that'd be cool.
Yeah, she
That'd be
loves
cool to
that.
see more of this world. Vanessa, what are you most excited for readers to see in Forever Rain?
In Forever Rain, I feel like I don't want to be spoilery, so the different relationships, because there are 3 romantic relationships that are they're all in like 3 completely different stages. And that's what I think was so fun about writing it, was like Kai and Aiden, who are from book 1, and that's not really a spoiler, they have this deep history. And I don't know if I've ever really read a book where you already have like an established relationship and you don't get to see them start. You don't get to see their growth. You just see kind of that where they're at. It's almost like a second chance romance kind of thing. I don't know if I've read a lot of books like that. And so that was fun to write, and trying to make sure I could like develop their relationship well and make you fall in love with them without seeing them fall in love, if that makes sense. Like they're already so in this, like so deeply in love, and they just have a lot of problems. So that was so much fun to write. But then there's also 2 other relationships that are at different stages, and they develop really differently. And they're some of my, like, I love them all for so many different reasons. I don't know if I can pick a favorite. Well, I can pick a favorite, but it's hard. So I'm really excited for readers to see that. But I'm also For Long Live, if you haven't read Long Live yet, what I think I'm most excited for people to read are the elementals and their personalities and how they're shaped by their elements of nature and like how each of their characters grow throughout the whole duology. That was something that meant a lot to me and that I put a lot of work into, was like their development and each of them having their own fears and desires that they had to figure out and flaws that they have to grow from and things like that. So the romance, and then I think just the elementals characters in general. I'm really excited for people to read.
Can we talk about the elementals for just a second? Because they have like the coolest names. I remember when I was reading Long Live, I was like, you've picked the most perfect names for these characters.
Well, I'm glad you say that. I spent so much time researching before I started writing this book and researching, like I was talking about earlier, I mean, cultures and climates and things like that for the actual kingdoms, but also researching like the history of the elements of nature and like what the elements mean to different cultures and different words associated. I mean, like just the whole nine yards. I had a document, I was trying to pull it up, see if I could find it, but I had a document that I had a lot of names listed on that I was trying to decide between that I ended up picking. Jade was actually going to be Terra at first because Terra means earth. But I decided that was a little too on the nose. So didn't go with that. But, you know, I just had a lot of different names. And Kai means something related to water in Japanese. And Rin, I can't remember exactly what that means, but I think Wyn, W-Y-N, was like a type of bird. And so I kind of changed it just because I liked Rin a little bit more. But they all like relate to their element in some twisted way that I came up with.
Well, I just remember like reading Kai and thinking that I was like, oh, that just sounds like she's a drop of water.
Oh, I love that.
I love like the cast too. Just I feel like what you did with the cast is something that's really unique because we have Isla and I mean, I don't know, tell me if it's a spoiler, but it's not like she's really magical when we meet her
Yeah.
in Long Live. Like she's just a girl. Like I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. And then you also have the elementals in there, just like the epitome of power. So you have these two varying sides of the spectrum, and it's really cool to see that in a fantasy novel because normally the main character is just like super overpowered. They have everything they could ever need, but she's just a girl, and I love that.
Yeah, I think that I didn't want there. I mean, I love the tropes that are, you know, kind of like they find out that they had this hidden power all along. Those are really fun books, and I do love reading those, but I kind of wanted to do something different in that this part might be spoilery, so maybe this gets cut, but she ends up choosing out of necessity to take this power that was never supposed to be hers. And that was just something I thought was interesting and different and really fit with her because she does have this savior complex. But I mean, she is in a way kind of like a chosen one because of her background and her heritage, but nothing could have come from that. I mean, she could have died never knowing that. Like it was never something that that had to, you know, it wasn't like some power got awoken inside of her. It just happened out of nowhere kind of thing, and she chose to take on this power. So that was something I wanted to be a little bit different from like the normal chosen one concept.
Oh, that's a really great way to put it, that she chose the power. Like you said, she wasn't the chosen one. Like her character is what decided, I guess, the fate. Oh, that's really cool.
I have actually a question. So she has a brother.
Yeah.
In Long Live. Could he have been the chosen one? Had things gone a little differently?
Yeah, any of them could have been. And that's not something I explore a ton, but like her dad could have been too. Like any of them technically had the power. So it's not that she was like the chosen one, the only one. Anybody in their bloodline could have done it. So even in book 2, this is kind of a spoiler too, but like, so sorry, Nancy. But like Acre is of that bloodline. So it's just their bloodline in general. But in a similar way, have you guys all read Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a similar way to like, it could have been Harry or Neville, and it's just the fact that Voldemort chose Harry out of his own, like he didn't really have a reason. That's kind of how this was. I mean, it wasn't just right place, right time, chose Isla.
I also really love, I'm going to talk about Long Live. I know this is we're supposed to be plugging Forever Rain, but I want to talk for one more second about a specific scene in Long Live. It takes place very close to the beginning of the book, so I don't think it's really a spoiler. But the scene when Kai and Jade walk into the bar, question mark, and Aiden is sitting there. The way that is written, I can just see it, just thinking about it, I can just see it.
Oh yeah, I'm glad. I love that part.
So
and using the whole miss me wife thing, I don't know what it is about that, but that has been one of my best hitting marketing scenes.
Yeah, because it's hot.
Yeah, I love that scene.
As you guys all know, I am an aspiring author. So is there anything that you'd like to share with other authors or future authors, Vanessa? Advice, tips, anything like that?
So it's hard sometimes for me giving writing advice because we all have different processes, and what works for me may not work for anyone else. I'm also not very disciplined, and I really struggle with staying on task and not procrastinating. So I'm not great with advice for that. But I do have one piece of kind of writing related / mechanical advice that I like to give when people ask. And I also have a generic publishing advice that's not necessarily writing. For writing, I use the Enneagram a lot with characters. If you guys don't know what the Enneagram is, it's a personality based system that puts you into one of 9 types based on your core fears and your core desires. And it helps me immensely with character development because you really have to think about what are their basic fears, what are their basic needs and their hopes and their desires, and how would they respond to different situations or interact with other types. I always do really deep character dives into this to kind of get to the root of what they want most in their life, and the Enneagram helps me kind of collect my thoughts with that and categorize them a little bit. And I love to use the Enneagram Institute website because it gives super in-depth descriptions of all 9 types, but then it also allows you to see what every single type, how they interact with the other types, and how they all are in a relationship together, like how a 1 is with a 4 in a relationship, or whatever numbers you are. So that has always really helped me if I'm ever okay, what would Rin do in this situation, or what would Isla do right here, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I really love it.
I need to do that.
I could monologue on that for forever.
I need to do that with my characters. I don't even know my Enneagram, but that's definitely really interesting. I've taken the Myers-Briggs personality test for my male main character for my current project. I wasn't even sure how accurate it would be to take the test for a fictional character, and then I read the results. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's exactly him. So I think that's pretty neat though. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. I might do that tonight, actually. Maybe.
Well, and even just taking a personality test for your characters makes you have to think about them in a different way, and it makes you really get to know them. I did a lot of this before I ever even wrote my first word in Long Live, and the connection I felt with my characters was it was wild. I mean, they were my best friends before I even wrote them, really.
Oh, I love that. It kind of helped you get inspired, I guess, to start writing.
Yeah, and definitely drives the story because you might have a certain scene in your head, but then you start writing it and you're like, okay, Aiden wouldn't do this, or Sebastian wouldn't say this, or whatever, and it can change the whole story. That's probably how it was supposed to be, you gotta do where the characters lead you.
I love that. And then what was your piece of publishing advice?
So I always say to network early and network authentically if you're wanting to publish. Start reaching out to other authors, both established and newer ones that are in the same phase as you, because all of them have different and useful things to provide, and making those connections is super important. But the authentically part is, don't just try to do this to get something out of them, and people can tell when you're just seeking something without being willing to give in return. And you need to be able to build these relationships that aren't just based on what can you do for me kind of thing. And I think I see a lot. I think I see a lot of that now, of people just trying to get something out of you, or trying to self-promo or whatever it is, and it's like, have you tried to network that with them as a person, not just as writers, but person to person kind of thing?
Has that happened to you? Like, as you've gotten more popular with your books, have you noticed people just kind of reaching out? And I don't know, do you just get that vibe sometimes where people are reaching out and you're like, okay, this doesn't feel genuine?
Yeah, it does happen. I mean, there are people who hop in my DMs all the time that, and I totally am open to answering questions. Like I'll help people, whether it's as small as like, how do you do this certain step on Ingram versus like, hey, how do you like create a marketing brand? I mean, those are very like specific versus broad questions. And I love to help people, but yes, there are times when like I've had people who aren't even following me hop in my DMs for the first time ever. They've had no interaction with me and they just start asking questions. And you're like,
Oh, weird.
"Hi, my name's Vanessa. How are you doing today?" um, and that can definitely get a little overwhelming. But I've also had some people who are super sweet I mean, we're on each other's posts all the time, just like commenting and encouraging each other, and like they're super interested in what I'm working on. And then if they hop into my DMs and are asking questions, like I just feel a sense of they aren't just in it for what they can get out of it, sort of thing. You just have to, just have to be careful with that, with like how you come across, and like you're not just trying to get something out of someone.
That's super fair.
Do you have any other projects you wanted to plug before we hop into the spoiler section?
Well, as you guys know, I'm working on a dark fantasy inspired by Wicked and the Hunger Games, and it's set to come out in November. It's going to be the first book in a series of interconnected standalones, and I'm actually revealing the title to my newsletter subscribers on Thursday, and I think this episode comes out Friday. And then I plan to reveal the title on social media on Saturday. So I'm not going to say, but yes, I'm very excited for that. I'm really excited. I'm in like the beginning stages of planning for the rest of the standalones, and it's really exciting. I've decided to kind of base them all off of stories that I loved growing up, and so kind of figuring out what stories inspire me the most with this sort of plot line and how I can make them all work together has been a lot of fun. It's been kind of like puzzle pieces, and then deep diving into memory lane of like, okay, what stories meant the most to me growing up, and do I want to include them in this?
I have a listener submitted question about your interconnected standalones. It came from a listener named Tabitha. She wanted to know if there was going to be a Shrek inspired story.
Okay, I actually don't know. I don't think in this one. Don't TBD. I'm still trying to piece things together, and Tabs knows I want to do a Shrek inspired story, but the thing is, like, I probably would not make them ogres, so like it wouldn't be. It would probably just be more of the storyline. So it is not out of the question, but if she's expecting like an ogre monster romance, that's probably not going to happen.
Tabs loves her monster romance.
I know.
Bessie, are you allowed to say what makes it Wicked inspired? As a theater kid, I have to ask.
Okay, I was about to say, I don't know who knows Wicked. Like,
Not me.
I don't know if Nancy has seen Wicked.
I haven't seen it. I know some of the songs though.
Okay, well, Drew, you love Wicked. Like, you know Wicked.
I know Wicked enough. I did like a variety show and we did some Wicked songs, but like I'm not like a diehard Wicked fan, but I appreciate it.
Well, I'm really excited for this because I have put a lot of Wicked Easter eggs in here that obviously you'll enjoy the story even if you haven't read Wicked or seen Wicked, but for those who have seen Wicked and know the songs, I think it's going to be a lot of fun for them because there's a lot of Easter eggs. But the main I it's inspired by Wicked, a lot of the same themes of like, so with Wicked, you have Elphaba, who is, it's the prequel, I guess, to Wicked, the Wicked Witch of the West, and to the Wizard of Oz. But the story also kind of overlaps into the story of the Wizard of Oz. So you see Elphaba / the Wicked Witch growing up, and then you kind of see how she became what people see her as, and that's a big theme in my dark fantasy of the main character kind of being this outcast, being seen as as wicked or as different or somebody who crosses these lines that you shouldn't cross. People don't really want to be around her. So that's definitely a huge theme, a huge relation between my main character and Elphaba. And then also this idea of goodness versus wickedness and how you don't always see the whole side of the story and not knowing who you can trust and kind of putting your trust in the wrong people, which that is a spoiler for both Wicked and my book. I can't really say much more. But really these ideas of like good versus evil, goodness versus wickedness, it may not always, and I think some of that is in Long Live and Forever Reign too, without me intentionally doing so. Just these morally gray characters who make these decisions, and it may look like the wrong decision to someone, but that's what they have to do in the moment, and kind of the ends justify the means kind of thing. I really like exploring those ambiguous lines.
Yeah, I think you do a lot of that, particularly in Forever Reign, which is actually perfect for us to hop into our spoiler section. So, Nancy, if you want to stay, you're welcome to, but if you don't want to be spoiled, you gotta take you out.
Yeah. I'll head out so I don't get the book spoiled, and probably spend some time reading it while y'all are recording.
Well, you said you're at 33%, right? And I went and looked that up in the Kindle because I wanted to see where that was. And I think you're right in the middle of my favorite chapter.
17? 18.
Okay. So chapter 18 is my favorite chapter. Was there a big reveal at the end of chapter 17?
Yeah. That. So
Okay.
So I will, since that's your favorite chapter, I will make sure I read that one tonight.
Okay.
I screamed at that reveal in 17 though.
Was it the name?
Yeah.
Was it the name thing?
Kai and Aiden.
Oh, okay. I was thinking when Isla Isla yeah. I can never remember. I'm so sorry, Bessie. When she shows up and says what her last name is, and no one gives a shit except for literally the people on like the council. They're like,
that's like chapter, I think that's chapter 15.
Okay. Yeah, they're like, oh, but everyone else is like, okay, babe, sit down.
I know. I think Aiden's like, we're gonna die here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Anyway, but y'all have fun in the spoiler section.
You will. Maybe by the time it comes out, you can listen to it.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, bye.
All right.
Have fun
Bye.
reading.
What was your... Okay, prefacing, we're hopping into spoilers, guys. If you don't want to be spoiled, you haven't read Forever Reign, I would suggest skipping this section and then coming back once you're done. Vanessa, what was your favorite part of the story to write?
So once again, when I was like coming up with my notes for these questions, I was thinking both books. So some of this, it might be long lived, but writing Forever Rain, my favorite part was writing Isla and Sebastian, like hands down. I love them so much. And especially Sebastian. Well, first of all, Isla is very much me in a lot of her decision making and like the anxiety that she has and this like kind of almost self-sabotaging. Like there was one part in chapter 18 where she's thinking, I just need to get out of here because I don't know how to say the words that are in my, like I don't know how to say these words. And I think a lot of us feel that way sometimes. Like we end up backing out because we're like, I don't know what I'm trying to say and I can't formulate these thoughts, so I'm just gonna bail. And I loved how Sebastian was like, hold on, let's like take a beat and figure this out together, like don't hide from me. And that just kind of set the tone for the rest of the book for them. And so that's why I love that chapter and I love writing them in particular, is just how they grow together. So that's definitely my favorite part about writing Forever Rain. I also really loved writing the magic and like Isla having this power and trying to figure it out. That was a lot of fun because obviously none of us know what that would feel like. Getting to figure that out and put myself in that situation was a lot of fun.
Did you know that you were going to get Rand and Annalise together from like the introduction of her character, or did that just kind of happen?
I honestly cannot remember if that was something I had planned. I don't think I had it planned from the beginning. I think when I first started writing it, I knew that I needed him to grow. Like I needed to show his growth. But I had planned on him ending up alone at the end of it. Alone, but stronger in himself, like having better, he went through a lot and he came out the other end. So not like alone. I can't remember when I realized that they would be a good match. It was definitely early on, probably within the first couple chapters. I was like, wait a second, she would be very good for him. And I also thought it was funny that I gave her like mahogany hair and dark green eyes, which is very similar. It's similar to Isla. I was like, this was not intentional, but I'm rolling with it.
I thought that was a very interesting choice because she was Sebastian's really good friend and ended up with Rin, and I was the opposite.
Yeah, I think it definitely helped with like Rin eventually coming to terms with the fact that, okay, Sebastian was not the villain in all of this, and I have to realize that. And like all the way at the end, so spoilers for very, very end, when he becomes like, Sebastian asks him to be on his court, and it's just like, how did we get here kind of thing. And I just think that's a cool, I don't know, I love that they, that now they're going to be living in the same palace for the rest of their lives and having to like interact daily.
Yeah. Or would it be okay if I shared my favorite part of the book? Is that allowed?
Yeah. It's your podcast.
I mean, is it okay with you?
Oh yeah, I know. I want to hear.
Okay, well, bonus chapter aside, because that was actually my favorite.
Oh my god, yes, the tears.
We are going to talk about that. It'll be cut from the show since that's not like just available for everybody, but we've got you here, so I want to talk about it for a second. But it was the scene where she's talking with her dad, and he's like, "You mean you haven't done anything because you're here for me?" He goes, "No, we're gonna go. We're gonna move, and you're gonna be with this man that you clearly love so much." And I was just sitting there, and I was just like crying when I first read it, and I was like, "He loves her so much," and it was a very emotional moment.
Oh yeah, I love that. I know that her dad does not have a huge role in these books. I mean, he does in the sense that like the first one, he's literally the catalyst for everything happening, but you don't see him off like a lot on screen. But I think she talks about him enough and like thinks about him enough in making all of her decisions that you know how much they love each other. And I also knew that it was realistic to have. I mean, she and Sebastian fall in love in such a short amount of time, or at least she does. I mean, he's been in love with her for years, but she doesn't have that history with him yet. And I don't think it's realistic for her to spend a week on an island with him and then be like, okay, cool, I'm going to move to Karsus and become queen. Like, she has a family, or she has her dad, and she has this life. And I really wanted to explore that more instead of it just being like, okay, boom, happy ever after. Because I just think that's realistic. And there would be this conversation between her and her dad. And I don't know.
Okay, but here's the thing. I would have moved in immediately. I would have been like, I've known you I spent approximately 2 entire weeks around you. When can I move in?
I mean, I would too if it was Sebastian, but Isla's a little more set in her ways.
Good for her. You couldn't tell, I just eye rolled. So that bonus scene that you wrote for us.
Yes.
Okay. I sent pictures of me crying on the group on the Discord.
Yeah, that made me feel proud.
It was so cute and so sweet. I loved it.
Thank you. I'm glad. It's actually available in the Kindle. Like, that's what's in the Kindle version of the book. So, do you remember how I let everybody vote on social media? That was one of my like tiers for my pre-order. And once I met a certain goal, I let everybody vote. And it was between, like, the 4 options were Kai and Aiden wedding scene from, like 1,000 and something years ago. Or I think another option was Isla and Bree just like hanging out, friend shenanigans. And then another option was the Elementals putting themselves to sleep 1,000 years ago. And then the final option was just a generic, like, I didn't want to give spoilers, so I just said a happily ever after for a couple of my choice. And that's the one that won. And so that's the scene I wrote, and it's digitally available to everyone. You have to read it digitally. It's not in the back of the physical book, but it is available in the ebook.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought that people had to come hang out on the Discord?
No, I just gave it to you guys early.
Oh,
we're just special, Harley.
I mean, I knew that, but
Yeah, so it is in the back of the ebook, and it is available on KU or like if you purchase the ebook. I'm really glad that that's the scene that won too, because like I really thought it was gonna be Kai and Aiden's wedding, like just based on the street team's reaction, my street team's reaction to things. I thought that it was gonna be Kai and Aiden, and everybody loves Kai. I mean, I love Kai and Aiden. Don't get me wrong, but I was surprised that this one. And so when I sat down to write it, I was like, what am I gonna do? And I'm so happy that that is what won because I got to include all of them. I didn't have to like if it was Kai and Aiden's wedding, then it would just be the Elementals. I wouldn't have Island, Sebastian, and Bree. And so I got to. It was just like a little reunion because I haven't been in this world in so long. I've been writing in my new world, and I miss them so much. Like they are like my best friends. It was like coming home.
I was unprepared emotionally. I mean, I already said I was crying. I was unprepared emotionally for how much I miss them because I didn't realize how much I miss them, and then I read the scene and I was like, I miss them so much.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm having a bad day, I will literally go through sometimes and read like my favorite chapters from the books from Long Live and Forever Reign because I love them so much. And I feel like that's weird because I wrote them, but I don't know. It doesn't, I feel very disconnected from it. Like it doesn't feel like I wrote them.
That's really cute. I
That
think
was really cute.
if that chapter is part of the book, then that might just be my favorite scene because like I was crying throughout the whole thing.
Aw.
I think I just like I didn't like Carly said I didn't realize I missed them. I was like you wrapped up their story so well. I felt so content and appreciative of how it ended, and I'm very critical of how books end because most of the time I'm like, I'll still remember the day that I finished Hunger Games and I was like, no, that's not okay. So I just felt content. I was like, okay, that was nice. The stories ended, it was wrapped up. Like, I feel okay. And then I read that last chapter and I'm like, oh, I am not okay. I'm not okay. I'm not ready for them to go. If you just wrote little novellas about their lives and what they're doing, I would read them. I'd fully read them.
That would honestly be so much fun.
I'm trying to convince Vanessa that she should start a Patreon and give us little bonus chapters.
Yes.
The
Yes, I'll
imposter
subscribe.
syndrome in me says no because I'm like nobody would subscribe.
Look, me,
You have
yeah,
2, you have 2 right here. I know Nancy would do it too, that's
me
3.
and Drew and Jenny, because she'll pay for absolutely anything. Not that she
Mm.
wouldn't do it anyways, but she buys everything from everybody. So she would absolutely do it. And then we can just scream all together.
There we go. I'll just write them just for you guys.
Perfect.
Please,
That little,
please.
I don't know. I think Nicole charges like $2 a month or $3 a month or something like that for her. So that's like what? That's 3 of us. That's $9 in your pocket.
That's
There you
true. I
go.
mean, I don't have to charge a lot. I could probably get some people to sign up, but I mean, I miss. I think Harley and I talked about this about how that could be something I do, like seriously do this just as supplemental, like keeping people interested in between books because there's obviously going to be like a 7-month gap between my next book. But I don't know if I can add something else to my plate. There are plenty of ideas I could have though because I love them. And I do really want to write like Kai and Aiden's wedding and like the elementals putting themselves to sleep. I want to write all of this. It's just there needs to be a time and place for it.
We're ready and waiting when you're ready.
Maybe one day I had thought about doing like a prequel either book or series of just the elementals, their history, because there's so much history there. But part of me is also sad because then I couldn't have Isla and Sebastian and Bree.
Maybe the Patreon one day. If any of you out there are listening and you would subscribe to Vanessa's Patreon, let's just flood her comments on our Instagram.
DM her directly. Nicely, politely, respectfully.
Respectfully.
Respectfully, Vanessa. Make a Patreon. No,
Glad that y'all liked the scene.
we did. We loved it. Will you share some of your favorite moments, like while writing or editing, like was something rearranged or anything like that? Like maybe peel the curtain back.
So I can't really think of a ton of specific moments besides parts that like made me cry. I do vividly remember almost every single scene that I wrote that made me cry, either while I was writing it or while I was editing it. So those are always fun and crying for different reasons. Like in Long Live, I cried when I cry at Kai and Aiden's scene by the river
Mm-hmm.
when she's like, I have always had something to live for, but I wanted something to die for. And then whenever they're talking later on and he's like, who am I that I could be loved by you? I always cry at that scene. And then I cried when Arden died.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
Just like thinking about it from Isla's perspective, that really gets me. But I mean, even when I was writing that scene, I wasn't pulling from any personal experience, and like I don't really have a way to connect to that, but just having to think of what would this feel like. And I also have been I'm very thankful to not have really lost someone that close to me in any capacity. So I mean, I've lost like distant relatives, but and like Isla is dealing with other grief too, like loss of her mom, which I am very thankful to still have my mom, and like she's lost her first love, and that has never happened to me. So I can't connect with Isla on any of these fronts, but just imagining what that's like and trying to like feel this grief that I've never felt before. It was hard, and it was like it really hits you like when you sit and think about what would this feel like. And I don't think I think it's different for everyone. You know, I don't think everybody's going to feel grief the same way. But just trying to write grief in and of itself is really difficult, especially for someone who's never really, I've never gone through that. So, same with like Forever Rain, where Isla's having to struggle with so much different loss. All of them are struggling with loss in some capacity, whether it's loss of a loved one or loss of your own. I mean, Rin, you know, loses the ability to use his legs the way he used to, and Jade and all of them lose their powers and they lose this trust that they had. Like, it's just a story of loss in a lot of different capacities. There are very weird parts that just made me cry. Like, you wouldn't think that they would make you emotional, but they just made me really emotional out of nowhere.
Actually, speaking of something that made me really emotional out of nowhere, do you know how mad it's going to be if you killed off Aiden in like the first 100 pages of that book?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
So listen,
God.
I didn't think you were going to do that because I know that you wanted the story to be a happily ever after, right? And there's not enough space in that story for Kai to get her happily ever after if Aiden died, especially that way at the beginning of the book. So like, I didn't think you were actually going to do it, but like the moment of terror I felt while I read those few pages in between finding out that he lives, I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed writing that, especially when he's like, this is the way I go, really? Like in water.
That made me laugh. I did laugh at that part, and I was like, this motherfucker.
Yeah, I just love Aiden so much. Like, he is my favorite elemental.
He's mine.
He's the funniest for sure. And I know we read well, yeah, we read this book kind of a while ago because we got
Mhm.
ARCs. And talking about this, it's reminding me how much I did cry during Forever Rain. Like, every time that Isla was doing something and she was like and then she thought about her brother, and it just hurt me so deeply, and I just started tearing up, and so for you saying that you haven't experienced that type of grief, you were able to convey it in a way where it's as a reader, it's like you could feel it in your heart.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that it came across that way. I think I also got emotional anytime that she would think about him. But another time I got really emotional during Forever Rain was Isla and Bree when they are on the like rocky outcrop out whenever Jade and Rin like take them right before Isla saves the kid from the shark. And
I was ready to throw
Yes.
hands with Isla.
Oh, I got so pissed off at that
Made
end of
me
that
so
scene.
mad.
at Isla,
Yeah.
that scene with her and Bree though, so that actually was a little bit shorter initially and something I added really I probably after edits. Like I don't even think my editor saw this scene. I think I just added it and I was like, this is good enough. Like punctuation's fine, grammar's fine, I'm good to go. I like proofread it multiple times, but that's how late I added this part and it was just embellished more on Isla and Bree and their like friendship and their relationship. But that scene definitely makes me emotional, just because I don't know if we see, I think we do see good friendships in fantasy, but I don't know how often we see these close relationships where it's not like about anybody else. It's just about them. It's not about a man. It's not about a relationship. It's just about these two best friends and how much they mean to each other. And that scene, like wherever Isla's talking to Brie and she's like, even if something does happen, like, here's how you're going to live your life. You're going to be fine. You know, you're going to move on without me, kind of thing. All that made me really emotional.
Oh, that scene made me cry, for sure.
It made me cry too, but I knew she was, I don't know if she was outright like lying about stuff. Like she already knew she was going to have to sacrifice herself. I don't know if she already knew that or not, but I knew.
No,
I knew
she didn't know any of
that that's what was going to have to happen.
No, she didn't know any of that yet. She was still hopeful that they would find the dagger and everything would be fine.
That's another one of those scenes where I can just envision it in my head so clearly, and maybe it's because I, like, grew up on an island, so I think that landscape was just easy for me to envision. But, yeah, I just wanna point out how mad I was at the villagers because she saved that child.
Yeah.
She saved that child. I remember I stopped and I, like, looked at my boyfriend, James, and I was like, "Can I just complain for a second?" I was like, "I have something I need to yell about."
Yes, that scene, you're so angry at these villagers for the way that they're acting, and none of them understand like why.
Mhm.
Isla, Rin, none of them get like why this is happening. And then we get to Acre, and Acre is down in the tunnels and they're explaining the resistance. And that chapter was so hard to write because it was like I have to make sure I can convey like what's in my head in a way that readers will understand. But that's also what Acre was trying to do. Acre was trying to explain in a way that Isla would understand what was happening. And it was like these people have been taught for generations to fear this magic. And so you can't blame the people. You have to blame the people who are in power, who made them live in this fear. And it was
Mhm.
so interesting to explore this, like, just like, who was the blame on, like, who do I put my anger towards, kind of thing. That was fun to explore.
I really liked the way that was done.
Are there any scenes that you had to cut from Forever Rain that you'd like to talk about, or were there any, like, changes that you made?
Not really in Forever Rain, honestly. Long Live, definitely. I had like 60,000 words worth of content that I ended up cutting. It just different scenes or bits and pieces of scenes that were just like, this doesn't really add to the plot. With Forever Rain, there was one chapter I know I cut, and it was just a little like, I think it was Kai and Aiden going to the capital of Aramir to like ask them permission to come with them to the island. And I realized with some help of my alpha readers that like I could integrate a lot of that information without that scene. It was kind of unnecessary. So nothing super fun that was cut. Forever Rain ended up being really clean from the get-go. Like my first draft is very similar to how the final ended up. So not really much was
Wow.
cut from there.
You made some really interesting changes to Long Live compared to what you originally thought you were going to do.
Yeah, the Long Live and the duology as a whole was definitely different than I had initially planned for it to be. Once I got like halfway through Long Live, I was pretty set, like it wasn't not much changed. But the very first parts of Long Live, my idea was very different. It was supposed to be a 4-book series with each book centered around one of the elementals, and they were kind of the main characters. Isla was just a secondary character who was supposed to die at the end of Long Live. Well, it wasn't even called Long Live at that point. I actually didn't come up with the name Long Live and Forever Reign until after I'd written the whole book. But so yeah, Isla was supposed to die, but she also wasn't a main character. Like she was going to be a side character. Isla's death was going to jumpstart Rin's villain arc for book 2.
Oh.
And so then it was going to be kind of like him versus the other elementals. And then there was going to be an overarching, big bad that they have to face in books 3 and 4. Because, with longer series, with a duology, you can get away with having one main antagonist, but I feel like with multi-book series, there has to be more to the story. But with the duology, I can get away with it. But yeah, he was going to be kind of the antagonist in book 2. But that changed probably within the first couple chapters. I just realized like this story is Isla. Like this is Isla's story. And so she had to be the main character, so she couldn't die. And yeah, Rin was supposed to be endgame. I did not, until about halfway through, the Dark God and Sebastian were actually 2 separate people. Like they were not supposed to be the same person. And then I realized, wait a second, I could make this a good twist if I have them be the same people. And I just needed to give him proper motivation. And then I fell in love with him. So the rest is history. They just had, like, he and Isla had such good chemistry from their very first interaction. And I couldn't get out of my head, like, how can I make this work? Like, how can I make him be redeemable? And so that changed about halfway through. I realized, okay, yeah, he's it. He's endgame. And I had to change. I actually had a scene that about halfway through, he like stabbed Isla through the stomach in like a dream sequence. And then Rin and Kai had to save her. And I realized, I don't know. I mean, he could come back from this. Like, this is redeemable, I suppose, but it's a lot more difficult to redeem. And I didn't want to deal with that. I did not want to have to deal with like Isla having to learn to forgive him for stabbing her. That's a pretty big deal. So
just a little.
I changed that. And the scene that I actually changed it to was because the reason that he had stabbed her was in the dream. She was like, this isn't even real. And he was like, want to bet? And then that's when he stabbed her. So in the actual book, what happened, she does say that. She's like, is this even real? And he kisses her on the wrist and brands her. So that's the change I made. He's like, yes, it's real. And like he kissed her. So I don't know if you remember that scene.
Oh, I do. Oh, it's burned in my mind.
But yeah, that was the change. Because like the point of it was him proving to her, yeah, this is real. And it's either I stab you or I kiss you. So
Vanessa, listen, I'm such a slut for enemies to lovers. If you made him stab her, I would have found a way to redeem him in my heart.
I mean, yeah, honestly, I would have been okay with it, probably.
it could have been done, especially with what I ended up with it being like he was being controlled. Yeah, that's super redeemable because once you realize it wasn't him the whole time, great, like I'm game. But that was just like logistically, it was a lot harder to come back from because then I started running into the problem of like, well, dang it, Isla can't, like if you were stabbed in the stomach, I got to take a lot of rest time. Like Isla's a human. I can't, she can't just like bounce back from this and start exploring the mountains 2 days later. So there were a lot of things that went into it of like logistically, okay, this is not as good of a plan.
I love how Isla was such a book girl in a sense where she was like, we all know Bree is the book girl.
Yeah.
But Isla was like, when Sebastian, we still didn't know that he was being manipulated. She was like, no, I think there's more to him. You know, like I think there's something else going on. I was like, yeah, same girl, because he's hot.
Yeah.
Because he's hot and he's bad. And
I can
yeah,
fix him.
I'm with
I can
you.
fix him.
Yeah, I can fix it.
Yeah. I think I don't really like explore this a ton, and I don't think I ever say this, but just I mean, I have to know so much about these characters, you know. And Isla definitely was like feels guilty for being so attracted to him, and I think she does say this once or twice, like she has this guilt of like, why do I feel this connection to him? Why am I so attracted to him if he freaking kidnapped my family? You know what I mean? And I think that's a huge part of why she was like so convinced that he couldn't be all bad and there was something else to the story because she's like, why do I like him so much?
Yeah, I get that. I think that's all of the questions that we had. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we let you go for the evening?
I don't think so. You guys let me ramble a lot. Thank you.
This was so much fun. Thank you for being our very first guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thanks for talking with us. It was a lot of fun to pick your brain. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. Follow us on Instagram at Bound and Book Podcast. My personal Instagram is at UndercoverFaye.
You can find me over at HJK Reads. That's my initials. It's a fun time over there.
And you can find me at Nancy Reads and Writes on Instagram as well.
Thanks for reading with us, motherfuckers. Bye.
Bye.
I am